Are you looking for that next great rock and roll documentary to check out? Well, today I've got the top 5 best rock and roll docs of 2026 so far. I've got one that takes you inside the private collapse and comeback of a legend, one that gives overdue credit to a person who lit the match on a huge band, someone who's done more than any other artist has done for the New York concert scene. I got one about a punk rocker who figured out how to win on MTV, and then a part 1 doc that definitely needs a part 2. Okay, here's how it's going to work today. I'm going to rank and count down the top 5 docs, but each of them will have to answer 4 questions. This doc is for you if, what makes it unique, what you'll get from it, and then I'll wrap it up with my bottom line. This is the Rock Talk Studio podcast where I look at rock and roll history and culture through all the new books, docs, stories, and products that matter. I'm your host, Big Rick, and let's kick this off with a documentary that's coming in at number 5. And this documentary is for you if you're a Black Sabbath fan, or if you're a guitar fan, or anyone who's really interested in how heavy metal actually began. This is the Tony Iommi doc. It's called The Godfather of Heavy Metal Part 1. And this came out on Gibson TV, so you can find it on Gibson TV on YouTube. And it really looks at and traces how his working class childhood in Birmingham started. It takes a look at the infamous factory accident where he lost the 2 tips of his fingers. The doctors told him he would never play guitar again, and how he made 2 fingertips himself and figured out a way to play. If that's not crazy rock and roll history alone, nothing is. And what makes this unique is the documentary does a really good job of connecting Iommi's sound to the world he came from. Really cool old footage of where he grew up and what it was like. There's a lot of great archival footage. You get to see this kind of industrial, war-torn environment where Tony grew up, and these smoke-filled skies and factories and the heaviness that was there. And you can kind of get the feeling of how this sound came about and how his environment shaped his riffs. The series also features new interviews with Tony Iommi himself, but there's also a serious lineup of guitar heavyweights reflecting on his influence. Brian May, Slash, Tom Morello. Tom Morello's always good for a story, and he's got great ones in this. Zakk Wylde plays a big part. Rob Halford and Youngblood is in there. What you'll get from this, I think it puts Black Sabbath into a broader musical content and shows how this Tony Iommi dark blues-based riffs and his use of space and his ability to create mood really helped push rock music into more heavier territory. And this is what makes this first episode work. It's not about what happened to Tony Iommi. It's about how his guitar sound changed the entire direction of music. My bottom line was this one. I really like this part 1, but where's part 2? It was supposed to be coming out this year. We still haven't got part 2. Is there going to be a part 2? They claim there is. Unfortunately, it's not out yet, but part 1 is definitely worth checking out, and it's the number 5 doc so far in 2026, Tony Iommi, The Godfather of Heavy Metal. Number 4 is a documentary if you are a Billy Idol fan, or if you're interested in a wild survival tale behind one of rock's most recognizable MTV-era stars who kind of graduated into this rock icon. The documentary is called Billy Idol Should Be Dead. It's currently out on Hulu. Pretty fitting title, as the film points out more than once how Billy came close to cashing it in a few times. The story is fairly career-spanning. It traces the arc of his music career from his punk roots to his rise as this pop culture rock icon, but also gives you a pretty crazy story about his wild behavior. And what's cool about this, what makes it unique, is Billy Idol himself. He's the main narrator of the documentary. He's on camera the whole time telling great stories. He's funny, he's charming, and he's really self-aware throughout the film, even when he's talking about some of the darkest and most painful moments of his life. And I think that's what makes this really work. You can connect to him, and he describes all the chaos and the damage and the bad decision, but he keeps you engaged because he's such a natural presence on screen. And as he points out in the doc, part of that is because he's being Billy Idol. So you get to see this William Broad character. That's his real name. That's who he is. But you also get to see this Billy Idol character. And what you'll get from it is a look at how William Broad became Billy Idol. The attitude, the image, the music, the excess, and the survival. But you also get to see how, and this is, I think, the sneaky part of this documentary, how Billy Idol became this cultural bridge from punk rock to a kind of pop stardom to figuring out the formula of MTV and becoming a huge MTV star, and then carrying on his career after that with the ability to survive and thrive and become a rock icon of who he is today. Bottom line with this one, Billy Idol Should Be Dead is a good doc. I wouldn't call it a great doc. There are moments there where it drags a little, but overall, again, Billy Idol is funny, he's charming, he's reflective, and even if the film itself isn't a perfect documentary, Billy on screen is enough to carry it. I think if you're a fan, it's worth the 2 hours. Check this one out. Billy Idol Should Be Dead. All right, number 3, we're rolling now. This one is The Rise of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Our Brother Hillel. This doc is for you if you're really interested in seeing what happened with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. This is the beginning. This is the moment where it all started. And it's a very interesting, not talked about very much story about the guy who started the band, Hillel Slovik. And it's unique because of that, because Hillel Slovik finally gets his moment. The documentary is not trying to tell the entire Chili Pepper story. It's more focused on this beginning, the friendship between Hillel, Flea, and Anthony, and how he turned his 2 best friends into musicians. A lot of great footage in this, a lot of early footage in this, and also Flea and Anthony participate in this documentary. Initially, it came out as a retrospective about the Chili Peppers, but that's not what this is. Flea and Anthony both came out and said that's not what it is. It's not an officially backed Red Hot Chili Peppers documentary, but to me, that makes it even better because it's got a different take here. And again, it's not a retrospective. It's more of a look at how this whole thing kicked off. And that's what you'll get from it. It's an outstanding, really deep understanding of who Hillel Slovak is and his role he played in creating the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You get to see his talent, you get to see his personality, his imagination, and you get to see the unfortunate story of what happened to him and how he's no longer with us. The bottom line is, I think this is great because there is no Red Hot Chili Peppers without Hillel Slovak. And that to me is the strength of this film. It's an honest look at how this whole thing started and the contribution of one guy that not a lot of people talk about when they talk about the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I really enjoyed seeing this side of the Chili Pepper story. Check it out. The Rise of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Our Brother Hillel. This next doc, number 2, is definitely the wild card of this group. Let's take a little break and come back with the last 2 best rock and roll documentaries of 2026 so far. Number 2, you'll love this documentary if you're into rock and roll history, especially the kind that lives kind of just outside the spotlight. This one's called Ron Delsener Presents, and it's not about a rock star. It's not about a musician or a session player or someone who ran a major label. It's about a legendary New York concert promoter, the one and only Ron Delsener. And if you grew up back east, you probably remember that name because it was on every concert ticket, every poster, every flyer about every show for many years. From about the 60s up until today, Ron helped bring major rock and roll concert to New York City and the East Coast. And this documentary does a tremendous job of showing you just who this character really is. And that's what makes it unique. It's Ron Delsener himself. He's in his 80s now, but he's still really vibrant. He's sharp, he's funny, he's witty, he's full of energy. This guy is straight New York. He's got the accent, he's got the attitude, the pace, the personality, and he clearly still loves music. He loves the whole production. He loves everything about it, and he still loves going out to shows. And the documentary follows him as he goes through his past, his memories, his incredible collection of rock and roll memorabilia. I mean, his house is full of crazy stuff. And you've got a lot of great artists contributing to this story. And these artists are vital to Ron and the New York scene. Bruce Springsteen and Steven Van Zandt sit together on a couch and talk about him. Patti Smith and Lenny Kaye are also together talking about it. Bette Midler, Paul Simon, John Bon Jovi, Gene and Paul from Kiss are here. A lot of really cool talk about this legend, Ron Delsener. And what you'll get from it is a better understanding of the people who helped build the other side of rock and roll. The documentary shows how much work Ron put into it, how much of his personality mattered, his hustle, and his love of music and love of the artist. This documentary is gritty. It's not overpolished. It's not a huge budget documentary, but it works. And it works in its favor not being that way. I like that it was presented in this fashion. Bottom line is, I loved Ron Delsner Presents. I fell in love with the character. It's a fantastic documentary about a rock and roll figure more people should definitely know about. I saw a few of those Ron Delsner Presents concerts back in the day growing up back east, but after watching this, I'll never look at that name the same way again. Ron Delsner is a true rock and roll character, and this documentary captures him beautifully. Long live Ron Delsner. Check out this doc, Ron Delsner Presents. Okay, here it is, the number one documentary of 2026 so far, and that is Paul McCartney, Man on the Run. This documentary is for you if you're interested in Paul McCartney beyond the Beatles mythology. When the Beatles split up, Paul wasn't just starting a new band. He was trying to figure out who he was without the biggest band in the world behind him. And what makes this unique is Paul participates in this documentary, and it's really cool. There are other people do participate, but it's McCartney's voice who's telling the story, who's narrating it. And the director does a really good job of leaning into this audio that he has of Paul in the interviews and explaining about what happened and explaining this amazing story. And because of this, you get a very personal feel in this documentary. You're not just being told what Paul was going through. You feel it from Paul's point of view. And the archival footage is just fantastic. It really stands out, especially the personal home videos that Paul has from his own collection. When the Beatles split up, Paul and Linda moved to this really beat up old farmhouse. And the footage there that they have of this is great, very private, very intimate. Paul's struggling. He's drinking too much. He doesn't even want to play music for a while. And he's really trying to find his way back. And then once he gets his mojo back, the documentary kind of shifts and moves into the formation of Wings. You see the rehearsals, a lot of great raw studio footage here, long stretches of live performances, great live performances, and the many different versions of the band as it slowly became something real for Paul. And that's one of the coolest parts of this film. Wings didn't arrive fully formed. You actually get to watch it grow throughout this documentary. And what you'll get from it is a better understanding of just how difficult Paul's transition really was. I mean, come on, he was coming out of the Beatles trying to reinvent himself. So watching this made me think, what was the greatest transition from band member to solo artist? And it's hard to top Paul. I mean, Ozzy built a really cool career after Black Sabbath. Robert Plant had a really interesting post-Zeppelin run. I love those early Plant records with Robbie Blunt on guitar. Sting comes to mind, huge commercial leap after the Police. But what makes Paul's story so fascinating is how much he had to overcome psychologically. He wasn't just trying to prove he could write hits. He was trying to rebuild his whole identity. And the documentary jumps into Paul and Linda's relationship a lot. Linda was often dismissed by the press and jealous fans, and even some of Paul's peers thought she didn't belong there. But this doc does a really good job of including enough people and how they speak about her and her contribution and what she did for not only Paul, but the family and the life they built together was another really cool part of this documentary. Bottom line is, the Man on the Run documentary really works because it doesn't treat Paul McCartney's solo years as a footnote to the Beatles. It treats them as a true rebuilding story. And this documentary is about identity and reinvention and marriage and criticism and family and just being able to overcome and having to start over after being in the biggest band in the world. If you're a Beatles fan, a Wings fan, or if you're just interested in what happens after this rock legend begins again, this one is definitely worth checking out. The best rock and roll documentary of 2026, Paul McCartney, Man on the Run. Check it out. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Love talking rock and roll with you. Hopefully I gave you some good recommendations for a good new rock and roll documentary. All right, let's tear it down, pack it up, and head on down the road. I'll catch you next time in the Rock Talk studio.